Hey guys, tonight we drift into the still waters and sacred soils of an ancient world, one woven from mud, maize, and more patience than a DMV line in July. You're about to explore what the Aztec gardens, those floating chinampas, can teach you about slowing down, trusting the process, and listening to the soft rustle of corn stalks swaying in the night. Picture this: the moon hangs heavy over Lake Texcoco, casting silver light across a city that seems to float. You're standing at the edge of Tenochtitlan, the glittering Aztec capital, where canoes slip like whispers between floating fields. Each garden plot is a small miracle built by hand, kept alive by willpower, and balanced delicately on the line between nature and ingenuity. You inhale. The air smells like sweet mud, night-blooming jasmine, and roasted maize somewhere nearby. Soft music hums from a distant flute. Torches flicker along the walkways, casting dancing shadows on the water. This city doesn't sleep, it slows. It breathes. It waits. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're still awake enough to type, drop your location and local time in the comments. I love seeing where you're listening from. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. You walk forward. No phone, no email, no urgent texts, just the sound of your feet brushing old stone and the occasional frog chirping from the canal edge. The gardens here are still, they don't need your approval. They've been here for centuries, just doing their thing, growing, slowly, patiently. This isn't farmland the way we think of it, wide open fields and fences. Aztec gardens float, literally. They're called chinampas, and they're basically rafts of vegetation, moduar, and reed mats layered over time until they become sturdy. Green, living platforms. It's like if your houseplant had a baby with a raft and then grew tomatoes. Each chinampa is anchored with willow trees at the corners, nature's way of saying, I got this. The Aztecs figured out how to use the lake's shallow water to their advantage, creating little plots that stayed moist without constant watering. Genius. But here's the kicker. You can't build one in a day. A single chinampa could take months to layer properly. Mud, reeds, compost. More mud, it's like lasagna, but earth-flavoured. And then, once it's built, you've got to wait. You don't plant right away. You let the soil settle. You test it. You watch how it handles wind and rain. Historians still argue whether this method was borrowed from earlier civilizations or homegrown Aztec brilliance. But either way, it required patience bordering on spiritual. And they didn't just plant willy-nilly. Every garden had its own little plan. Maize went in the middle. Beans spiraled up the stalks. Squash spread wide across the base. That's the Three Sisters planting method, which, fun fact, is still used by sustainable farmers today. Who knew your organic CSA box was copying the Aztecs? But it's more than efficient. It's ritual. Every planting had a rhythm, a time, a prayer. You didn't just grow food, you grew relationships with the land, the gods, and the community. And sometimes that meant doing nothing, just waiting. No pesticides, no fast-acting fertilizers. You had to learn to sit with the garden, feel the wind, watch for subtle signs, a bird landing early, a shift in scent, a ripple that says the water table is changing. The kind of attention you can't rush. Here's a weird little tidbit. Some chinampa farmers used to sing to their crops, not loudly, more like gentle humming, tuned to the wind. They believed it helped the plants grow. Scientists today call this plant acoustic response. The Aztecs just called it being respectful. Meanwhile, you watch an old gardener across the canal. He's checking the soil with a stick and his bare toes. No clipboard, no apps. Just knowledge passed down and down like a lullaby. He smiles at you. A gap-toothed, muddy-grinned smile that says, "What's your hurry?" And maybe he's right, because this is what the gardens are really about, not just food, but stillness, control through surrender, the quiet magic of trusting something to grow while you step back. You feel it now. That subtle shift, your shoulders drop, your jaw unclenches. You're not here to do, you're here to be. Somewhere in the distance, a flute trills, maybe a frog joins in. The water laps against the garden edges with the softest splash. It's a lullaby older than any language you know. And just like that, You realize this isn't a story about farming. It's a story about time. You've stepped into a world where every leaf, every ripple, every quiet breath has meaning. And none of it's in a rush. You step lightly across a narrow wooden bridge, the kind that creaks just enough to remind you to be present. Beneath your feet, the black water of the canal reflects the moon, the stars, and 1,000 years of quiet effort. On the other side, a young girl tends to a small chinampa, her hands dark with earth, her hair tied back with a strip of woven fibre. She doesn't look up. She's listening. Not to you, to the garden. The Aztecs had a word for this kind of care. Tlaquia, meaning to see, to watch. But it didn't mean just using your eyes. It was about perceiving with your whole body, the way your skin notices a shift in temperature, the way your ears pick up the hush before a summer storm, the kind of full-body awareness modern life rarely makes room for. You kneel beside her, not to help, just to observe. She moves in slow, precise gestures, loosening soil, adjusting a squash vine so it hugs the ground just right. Her pace is not lazy, it's intentional. She knows something most of us forget, that rushing isn't the same as progress. Historians still argue whether Chinampa labour was communal or divided by household, whether these young gardeners were training under parents, priests, or specialised elders, but no matter who taught them, the lesson was the same. Time is an ingredient, not a barrier. You glance up, across the water, you see a pattern forming. Chinampas dot the lake like a mosaic long, rectangular patches of green, each framed by reeds, their edges softened by willow trees that bend and dip like slow dancers. This was city planning in harmony with nature, not domination over it. Tenochtitlan didn't build on the lake, it built with it. Now here's something a little weird. The Aztecs built their capital in the middle of a swamp on purpose. According to their mythology, they were looking for a sign, an eagle perched on a cactus, eating a snake. When they finally saw it, it was right here, on a soggy island in Lake Texcoco. Most people would have said, let's keep looking, but the Aztecs said, perfect. And then they turned a marsh into a metropolis. Talk about commitment. You wander farther along the canal, passing under a wooden arch woven with vines. The scent changes now. You catch notes of chili, marigold, and wet stone. You pass a group of older women seated in a circle, their hands moving rhythmically as they wrap herbs in cloth bundles. Each one tells a story, passed from mouth to mouth like seeds in the wind. A soft joke is shared, and they laugh low, breathy chuckles that warm the air. One of them holds up a small clay figurine. Xochitl, she says, tapping its chest. Flower spirits. It's both decoration and reminder. The land gives beauty as well as sustenance. You keep walking. The garden changes subtly as you go. Where the last chinampa held maize and squash, this one is full of flowers. Bright orange cempasúchil, yellow xochipilli, deep red tlacoxochitl. These weren't just pretty, they were used in offerings, medicine, even dye. And, fun fact, some Aztec flowers were mildly psychedelic. Yep. Garden parties had a whole different meaning. But beyond the colour and scent, there's something else happening here. A pattern, a rhythm. Everything is placed with care. You remember what someone once told you, that a Chinampa was not a garden, it was a calendar. Farmers tracked the seasons through soil temperature, sunrise angles, bird migrations. No apps, no alarms, just knowing. You pause, the breeze is picking up, it rustles the reeds and flutters your tunic. A low whistle cuts through the night somewhere. Someone is playing a bone flute. The sound slips over the water like a sigh. And here's the thing, no one tells you. When the Aztecs weren't farming, they were performing rituals for the farm. Dances, chants, offerings. Not for show, for balance. They believed in feeding the soil, not just with compost, but with gratitude. You know, the old-fashioned version of good vibes only. Now, of course, we look at that with skepticism. Scholars debate whether the rituals had measurable effects or were mostly symbolic. But here's a thought. Maybe symbols are effects. Maybe slowing down to dance, sing, or sit in silence with your hands in the dirt does something to the world, or at least to you. You find a bench, just a flat rock, really, and sit. Your spine softens. Your breath evens out. The girl from earlier is now gone, but her garden still hums with quiet energy. Fireflies blink like tiny lanterns above the crops. Somewhere nearby, A dog yawns, and suddenly you understand something. Patience isn't passive, it's active surrender. It's choosing not to force what will unfold in its own time. The Aztecs didn't make their crops grow faster, they made space for them to grow right. There's a difference. You close your eyes, the sounds blend together. Frogs, flute, wind, the hush of water lapping wood. No notifications, no urgent anything. Just you and a 700-year-old ecosystem, doing what it does best, being patient. It's not glamorous, it's not fast, but it's real, and it works. The air shifts again as you rise from the stone bench. A low mist clings to the Chinampas now, softening edges and muting the world to watercolours. The moon hangs high, indifferent and watchful. You step quietly, your sandals barely making a sound on the damp path, and head toward a new patch of garden, guided by the faint glimmer of fireflies. Ahead, a man kneels by a mound of freshly turned soil. He's older, with a silver-threaded braid resting along his back, and a face mapped by time. His hands are inside the earth, literally buried up to the wrists, and he's humming. A slow, low tune, like something a river would sing if it had a voice. You don't interrupt. Instead, you crouch a few feet away and just watch. Here's the thing about soil. It's alive, not metaphorically. There are more living organisms in a teaspoon of healthy earth than there are humans on the planet. And the Aztecs knew it, maybe not in numbers, but in essence. That's why they added aquatic muck and decaying vegetation to the Chinampas. Not just fertilizer, an ecosystem. Mainstream historians agree Chinampas were among the most productive agricultural systems in pre-modern history. We're talking 7 harvests a year in some cases. That's not farming, that's wizardry. Except the trick wasn't magic. It was patience, balance, and a whole lot of muck. The man beside you finally lifts his hands. They glisten with wet soil, and he nods to the mound like he's finished a prayer. Then, without a word, he moves on hands behind his back, leaving you alone with a small pile of dirt that suddenly feels holy. You glance down. Something glimmers. A beetle with iridescent wings is crawling across the soil. You follow it with your finger, tracing its path as it disappears under a clump of grass. It reminds you of something a guide once said. If you want to learn how to grow things, first learn how to notice things. Seems obvious. Isn't. Now, if you're wondering whether the Aztecs had formal agronomists, well, sort of. They had specialist farmers, herbalists, and even seed keepers, but their knowledge wasn't written down. It was carried in hands, mouths, and memories. And here's the debate. Some scholars believe we've only scratched the surface of what they knew. Others think we've already lost most of it. Either way, the result is the same. These gardens whisper secrets we're just barely able to hear. You rise again and make your way toward another garden. This one's older, more weathered. The wood holding the bed in place is dark with years, yet something about it feels even more alive. An elder woman with a woven shawl tends it with care. She carries a pouch of crushed obsidian and sprinkles it along the rows. At first you think it's symbolic. Turns out, obsidian has minerals that enrich the soil. Of course it does. And here's a quirky tidbit. Obsidian wasn't just for blades. Some Aztec farmers used ground volcanic glass in rituals to cut away blight or poor yields. Imagine that performing surgery on a garden with a gemstone. Dramatic. Yes, effective. Who's to say? You lean closer, inhaling the scent of crushed herbs. The rows here aren't strict. They curve, twist slightly, like they were grown by the wind instead of the hand. It's beautiful, in a wild kind of way. You ask the woman softly why she doesn't plant in straight lines. Her answer is a shrug. The plants don't. You blink. That's it. That's the answer. Because sometimes, the smartest thing you can do is listen. Modern farming tends to force the land into rigid grids. But Chinampas, they read the land. They respected the microclimates, the sun's angle, the way rainwater pooled in corners. It wasn't a system, it was a relationship. And patience is the glue of any relationship. You walk on. A warm breeze carries the scent of roasted maize and wood smoke. Somewhere nearby, someone is making tortillas. Your stomach growls because of course it does. But more than that, you feel a kind of hunger for this way of being. Slower, closer, quieter. A child passes by, balancing a bundle of flowers in her arms. She stumbles slightly, petals spilling to the earth. You help her gather them, and she grins, missing teeth and all. One of the flowers is bright magenta, its stem still damp with morning dew. She tucks it behind your ear like it's the most natural thing in the world. Maybe it is. You pause beside a plot growing amaranth, one of the Aztec staple crops. Not just a food, this was a ritual grain, mixed with honey and shaped into little gods during festivals. Imagine biting into your deity before breakfast. Sweet, slightly nutty, and probably a bit chewy. You glance up. The stars are clearer now, brighter, as if they, too, are watching the garden. Somewhere in the distance, a conch shell sounds low and long, like a yawn echoing across time. The garden doesn't flinch. It keeps growing. And so do you. You keep walking, your pace slower now, more deliberate. The path beneath your feet curves around a cluster of chinampas, and the plants seem to lean in, listening. Overhead, a nightbird flutters past, barely more than a shadow skimming across the moon. Everything hums with calm purpose, as if the gardens themselves are mid-breath. Ahead, a young man is seated cross-legged beside a reed basket, carefully weaving new netting onto the base. His fingers move with such rhythm, such focused calm, that for a moment you forget what century you're in. You sit nearby, and he doesn't look up, but you feel his awareness, like a ripple in water. He is part of the scene, not just present in it. This is where patience wears a different face. Not the patience of waiting, but of crafting, repeating an action so many times it becomes second nature. These gardens weren't just grown. They were engineered, maintained, weeds pulled, canals dredged, banks reinforced with woven reeds and stakes, every few days, forever. The average chinampa wasn't just a muddy patch. It had layers, decaying plant matter, dredged lake soil, rotting reeds all stacked and turned over time, like a slow-cooked stew of nutrients. And yes, it smelled, but to an Aztec farmer, that scent meant abundance. Historians still argue whether chinampas were truly floating gardens. The poetic names stuck, but many agree they were anchored extensions of lake beds, rooted deep into the marshy floor, floating or not. They worked, and that's what mattered. The young man beside you finishes a loop and finally glances over. He offers the basket wordlessly. You reach out and take it, fingers brushing the woven rim. It's still damp from the reeds, fragrant with rivergrass. Inside are small red fruits, probably tomatillos, or maybe ground cherries. You bite one, and it bursts on your tongue, tart and bright. This is the part that no textbook explains. The quiet satisfaction of doing something right, not fast. A small group of gardeners appear at the water's edge, carrying wooden rakes and cloth bundles. They look like they're off to gather lake mud. You follow from a distance, the soles of your sandals making soft plashes along the narrow bank. One woman sings softly as she works, no words, just notes. Another hums harmony. You don't understand the tune, but you feel it settle in your bones. They wade into the water up to their knees, pulling at the soft muck with long, curved paddles. The mud is thick, heavy, and glistens under starlight. This is the lifeblood of the chinampa, rich in nutrients, packed with silt and decomposed water plants. It nourishes the soil above. The process takes time. A lot of it. One chinampa could require a full day's dredging every week during growing season. Still think gardening is relaxing. And here's a quirky tidbit. Some Aztecs believed lake mud held spiritual power, that it remembered the dead. So to feed your crops with it was to ask the ancestors for strength. Creepy, sure. Comforting. Also, back on land. The gardeners haul their bundles to the beds, spreading the dark sludge with bare hands. It's messy, methodical, and deeply satisfying to watch. You try not to flinch when a frog leaps out from one pile and vanishes into the reeds. You glance at your fingers. Even from watching, you feel stained, muddy beneath the nails of your imagination. It's oddly grounding. Further down, a cluster of maize stalks rustles in the breeze. You drift toward them, and the air changes again, warmer here, drier. Each stalk stands tall, topped with tufts of silk and heavy ears tucked into leaves. These aren't modern hybrid corn. These are heirloom varieties, blue, reds, speckled, sacred, literal pillars of Aztec life. Maize wasn't just a crop. It was a god, a calendar, a metaphor. There was a maize deity for every phase of growth planting, sprouting, maturing, harvesting, which makes sense. This was the crop that meant survival. One priestess wrote poems about it, or so the story goes. They were carved on temple walls, little odes to kernels and sunlight. Whether that's true or not, historians still argue. Naturally, the image lingers. You run your fingers along a leaf, feel its fine fuzz, the whisper of dry life. The corn here doesn't grow in rows. It grows with beans, squash, sometimes purely intercropped in that famous Three Sisters system. Each plant helping the others, beans fixing nitrogen, squash shading the soil, corn climbing high to catch the light. Nothing in isolation, everything in cooperation. It hits you. Then, how much of this garden runs on relationships? Between soil and root, plant and water, human and earth, even silence and action. It's not linear. It's a circle, a rhythm. You sit down again, beneath the maize, and let the moment wash over you. A breeze sighs through the stalks, like an old lullaby. Somewhere nearby, someone cracks open a gourd of water. The splash echoes faintly, like laughter underwater. A moth lands on your sleeve. Its wings look like painted bark. You stay still, honouring its trust. Then it flutters off, and just like that, you're alone again. But never really. You breathe. You wait. You listen. And the garden grows. You shift your weight slightly. Still seated beneath the tall stalks of maize, the ground is cool beneath you, padded with old leaves and bits of dry husk. Somewhere above, a cicada begins to hum, the sound like a far-off electric wire. The hum grows, then settles, merging with the background rhythm of this place. Patience. Here is not stillness, it's presence. You follow a narrow path now, ducking beneath a woven arch of reeds. The light shifts again, the moon filtered through loosely thatched roof panels. You've entered a small shelter, open on the sides, built for sorting and drying. Strings of red chilies and clusters of amaranth seeds hang from beams overhead, casting flickering shadows that sway with the breeze. A woman in a tunic the colour of toasted maize sits cross-legged in front of shallow baskets. She sifts dried herbs, epazote, worm seed, crushed marigold petals, each with a specific use, culinary or spiritual. She catches your eye and gestures gently for you to sit. You do, and she hands you a handful of seeds to help sort. Some are split, some still whole. You begin, awkward at first, but soon you find a rhythm. This is not fast work, it's careful. It's about noticing the details, the tiny splits in the seed casings, the almost silent rustle as you stir your fingers through them. You imagine doing this every evening for a lifetime. It's not boring, it's meditative. A ritual that brings you closer to your food, your season, your land. Here's a mainstream historical fact you may not have heard. The Aztecs didn't just farm for food, they cultivated for ritual. Many herbs were grown not just to flavour meals, but to heal, to bless, to ward off illness. Marigold, for example, was used to guide spirits back to the living during special ceremonies. In these gardens, the lines between agriculture and spirituality blur. Every plant has a purpose beyond nutrition. The woman beside you suddenly sneezes twice, sharply, and laughs. She picks up a handful of crushed chilies and raises an eyebrow at you. You both know that's the culprit. You fake a dramatic gasp, and she snorts, waving the dust away with exaggerated flair. It's a small moment, but it breaks the silence like sunlight through clouds. You smile. She smiles. Then you both return to your work. Scholars still argue whether these sorting shelters were private family spaces or communal stations. Some argue for efficiency, the idea of designated drying huts spaced throughout the Chinampa network. Others believe it was all much more domestic, each home with its own humble prep station. Either way, the principle is the same: slow care. And care is exactly what you find around the corner. You approach another plot, this one dense with medicinal plants. Someone has arranged them in concentric rings, with taller stalks at the outer edges and low herbs toward the centre. A spiral of healing, laid out like a living diagram. You crouch to examine one plant. Small green leaves, faintly fuzzy, with a sharp minty scent. You crush a bit between your fingers and inhale peppermint. No, something spicier. A figure stands nearby, hunched slightly, their hands clasped behind their back. You recognise the gait of an elder, one who's walked this spiral thousands of times. They murmur something, then gesture for you to follow. You do, stepping slowly behind them, tracing the spiral inward. They begin pointing, quietly naming plants. Tlalpapatle, Chicalote, Matlalin. Their voice is soft, like wind through reeds. You catch fragments. Fever, cough, blood, dreams. One quirky tidbit stands out. They mention a plant that helps with ghost dreams. You ask what that means. They shrug and smile. You'll know when you have one. They say, great, no pressure. Still, the implication sticks with you. That this garden doesn't just treat the body, it protects the mind. The soul, it's not just science. It's memory, story, myth. Back at the edge of the spiral, you find a flat stone bench and sit. You feel the pulse of the land through your heels. You look up. The moon's higher now, near its peak. Its light turns the canal into a silver ribbon. A canoe drifts silently by, guided by a lone figure with a long pole. They don't see you, or maybe they do and say nothing, but either way, the silence feels intentional. This is the kind of place that doesn't need to prove itself. It just is. You begin to notice the other small lives around you. An ant colony moving methodically over a clay path. A toad tucked under a damp leaf. A bat overhead, darting between fruit trees. Everyone here is working, living, moving in rhythms that ignore your sense of urgency. You exhale slowly. You've forgotten about your phone, your inbox, your list of worries. They've dissolved into the soil, absorbed by the amaranth, folded into the breeze. You're just here. There's something beautifully strange about watching a society operate at this scale. Not industrial, not digital, just deliberate. People spend their entire lives doing one thing really well, growing, harvesting, preparing, blessing, and somehow it works. Not because it's perfect, but because it's patient. You feel the weight of that idea settle in your chest. The kind of weight that isn't heavy, but grounding, rooting. From somewhere nearby, the low thud of a drum. Not urgent, just there, like a heartbeat. The old gardener returns with a bundle of fresh-cut herbs and lays them on the bench beside you. They don't speak, just nod once. You nod back. That's enough. You glance once more at the medicinal spiral, glowing softly under moonlight, and you realize everything you need to learn about patience is right here. Growing quietly in the soil, you follow the path that curls along the canal, still warm with the heat of the day, though the night air has begun to rise cool and steady around your shoulders. Reeds rustle softly at the water's edge, and the occasional ripple sends silver streaks gliding across the surface. You're walking slower now, more in tune with this place. Your steps less rushed. The Aztec garden has done something to your pace, like it's wrapped a soft hand around your thoughts and gently pressed pause. Ahead, you notice a collection of baskets and mats, arranged beneath a shelter of woven branches. The air smells faintly sweet, floral and nutty. You've stumbled onto a flower drying station. Several people, mostly women, sit on woven mats, surrounded by heaps of vivid colour. Marigold, cosmos, dahlias, and bright red bougainvillea. Their hands move steadily, removing petals and stems, sorting them into shallow trays. One woman waves you over. She's not young, but there's a sparkle in her eye that suggests she knows more than she lets on. You sit beside her, knees touching the mat. She holds up a marigold and begins to pluck its petals with a deliberate, almost ceremonial rhythm. You mimic her movements. Pluck, pluck, turn, pluck, pluck, turn. You have to listen, she says quietly. The flowers tell you when they're dry enough to fall. You blink. Unsure if she's joking, but she's already returned to her task. Perfectly serious. It's not about speed, it's about presence. That's the heartbeat of these gardens. Slow devotion. You aren't just removing petals, you're preserving them for rituals, for remedies, for pigments used in painting. Nothing is wasted. Even the stems will be steeped to create a mild tea. The Aztecs believed in the completeness of cycles. Nothing simply ends, it transforms. A historical fact for you. In Aztec society, flowers weren't just beautiful, they were sacred symbols of life, death, and balance. The marigold, or cempasúchil, was essential for festivals like Micalhuitontli, the precursor to modern Dia de los Muertos. Flowers were offerings, medicine, metaphor. The woman next to you suddenly grins and places a flower crown on your head slightly lopsided, bright orange and yellow. Now you look ready to speak with the gods, she says. You bow dramatically in response. She chuckles and shakes her head. A shared moment of silliness among a field of still petals. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some Aztec gardeners played music to their plants. Flutes, soft drums, even humming. They believe plants grew better when surrounded by harmonious sound. You wonder if your poorly sung shower songs would pass the vibe check here. Probably not. These gardeners would likely stage a gentle intervention. You watch as a child scampers over with a clay bowl filled with coloured powders, dried and ground petals. By the look of it, she draws a simple spiral on the ground in front of the mat. You watch as the wind lifts a few grains, scattering orange and red into the night. Even the waste here is art. The people around you work in rhythm, as if guided by a quiet song you can almost but not quite hear. It's a form of meditation. You realise, the kind that doesn't need silence, just repetition. You think about how many times in your life you've wished things would happen faster, how many hours you've spent scrolling, waiting for distraction to ease your restlessness. But here, even the silence feels purposeful. You're not waiting, you're participating. Scholars still debate whether Aztec flower drying was strictly utilitarian or ceremonial in its own right. Some argue the space you're in would have doubled as a teaching site, where elders passed down a knowledge of each flower's purpose and symbolism. Others suggest the drying itself was ritual, almost sacred, every flower placed with care, as if in dialogue with the gods. You look down at the pile of petals in front of you, an accidental mosaic of sunset tones, and feel, for just a second, the hum of connection, not just to the people here, but to every hand that's ever held a flower and wondered what more it could mean. You shift slightly and notice another figure nearby, kneeling beside a basket of what looks like maize silk. You move closer, she explains, softly, that it will be used to make a diuretic tea good for kidneys, calming for the stomach. But you have to dry it right, she says. Too long in the sun, it loses its medicine. You nod. Timing is everything. You think again of the phrase, slow devotion. You glance up and notice the stars are brighter now, scattered across the sky in dense clusters. A breeze picks up, and the flower petals rustle gently in their trays. The people around you begin to pack up, tucking their materials into woven bags, securing bundles with cords made of twisted agave fibre. No one rushes. There's no whistle blowing, no announcement, just a collective understanding that it's time. You follow them as they move toward a low-walled enclosure near the edge of the garden. It's not a building exactly, more like a sanctuary for objects. Inside, bundles of dried plants hang from ceiling beams. Flat stones etched with faded glyphs line the walls. In the centre, a large round stone serves as a table. On it, bowls of crushed pigment, small knives, dried cacao pods, and a few delicate feathers. It's part apothecary, part altar. Everything here has a use and a story. You reach out to touch the edge of the table, but pause. This space feels sacred, not in a flashy way, in a quiet way, the kind that makes you lower your voice without thinking. This, too, is part of the garden, the memory chamber, a place to honour what the earth has given, to remember that nothing was grown without care, and that everything returned to the cycle, eventually. You step back into the moonlight and inhale deeply. The air is thick with scent, earth, drying herbs, and something faintly sweet. Maybe it's the flowers, or maybe it's just the garden, breathing alongside you. This isn't just farming, it's philosophy. And tonight, the garden is your teacher. The moon is riding high now, casting long silver shadows over the chinampas. You trail behind the others as they disappear into the folds of the garden like moths drawn toward warm light. The stillness of the night feels deeper here, like the land itself has taken a long breath in and is holding it, waiting for something. Up ahead, you notice a structure rising from the marsh wooden scaffolding with an elaborate system of nets, poles, and baskets suspended over the water. Someone is moving among them, silhouetted against the sky. A fisherman. No closer inspection reveals he's harvesting aquatic plants. You edge nearer, feet crunching softly on the packed earth path, and he waves without looking up. Night is best, he says, voice low but friendly. They rise to the surface when it's cool. His hands work methodically, gathering long strands of green, wringing them out with practiced twists, and laying them across a stone to dry. This is ahuautl, known sometimes as Mexican caviar. The Aztecs collected these water bug eggs with delicate tools, drying and pressing them into cakes packed with protein. You watch as he smooths a pale cake into a circle, pressing gently with a carved flat stone. He's not in a hurry. You get the feeling he hasn't been in a hurry in a long time. In Aztec times, ahuautl was considered a delicacy, offered in religious ceremonies and sometimes served with amaranth dough during festivals. You wonder if your picky modern palate would go for it. Probably not without a dipping sauce, or at least a warning label. But here, it's more than just food. It's patience in edible form. The bugs don't hatch unless the water is just right, and the harvesters have to know their rhythms like family birthdays. No guesswork, only observation and gentle timing. You squat beside him and peer into the shallow water. Tiny ripples, illuminated by moonlight, scatter around your reflection. He points to a spot and whispers, "See that shimmer? Eggs, almost ready." You nod like you see it, even if you don't. He chuckles. "It took me 3 summers to learn that shimmer." You glance at him. He doesn't look old, maybe in his 30s, but there's a weight to his presence, like someone who's listened to more seasons than he's spoken. Patience. Again, you sit cross-legged beside the drying racks, and the fisherman offers you a sliver of dried ahuautl cake. It's surprisingly light, like seaweed with a touch of nutty sweetness. You chew slowly. Somewhere in your brain, your modern sensibilities wince. Somewhere deeper, your instincts nod in quiet approval. A gentle breeze kicks up, stirring the hanging nets. The soft sound is like wind chimes made from grass. Peaceful, but not empty, full of unseen life. A historical fact for your collection. Aztec agriculture was so sophisticated that even lakes and marshes were farmed, not just for plants, but for insects, amphibians, and algae. Spirulina, for example, was another superfood scooped from the lake surface and dried into cakes, much like the ahuautl. Nothing was considered waste. Every niche of nature had value. If you looked with patient eyes, that's something the Aztecs knew instinctively. Nature doesn't rush. It responds, it teaches, but only when you stop long enough to listen. And here's your quirky tidbit. Some Aztec priests reportedly fasted by eating nothing but ahuautl cakes and water for days on end, believing it purified the body and attuned the spirit. Try telling that to your personal trainer. Sorry, no smoothies this week, just water bug eggs and ancient vibes. You both laugh quietly at the thought, the fisherman and you, and he begins to gather his tools. He doesn't rush. He folds each net with care, pats the drying cakes gently, like he's tucking them in for the night. You ask how he knows when it's time to stop. When the frog stops singing, he says simply, "You listen." Sure enough, the croaking has faded. Silence wraps around the garden like a blanket. You stand together and walk the path back toward the heart of the garden. The fisherman peels off toward another trail with a nod, leaving you alone again with the stars and the soft splash of your steps along the canal. The garden opens up before you once more, this time revealing rows of maize so tall they seem to reach into the stars. Their leaves rustle in the breeze like ancient whispers. You run a hand along one stalk. The kernels are plump, iridescent in the moonlight. Some yellow, some deep red, some purple so dark they're almost black. This isn't just food, it's memory, encoded in starch. The Aztecs didn't just grow maize, they worshipped it. Maize was the axis of their world, the body of the gods, the source of human life. Entire myths sprang from its golden grains. One such myth claimed that humans were created from maize dough mixed with divine blood. Suddenly, your last taco feels a little more sacred. Scholars still argue whether Aztec maize cultivation techniques surpassed those of their neighbours, or if they were just more widely recorded thanks to Spanish chroniclers. What's not debated is how central maize was to every layer of their society, from daily meals to offerings, from currency to calendar markers. You remember learning once that maize can take over 100 days to mature. Depending on the variety, that's 100 days of watering, weeding, watching, waiting. No fast food, no express shipping, just faith that each golden row will rise in its time. And yet, they did it, season after season, because patience was baked into their very survival. You kneel beside one row and trace a glyph carved into a nearby stone marker. It's worn by rain and time, but still visible an image of a maize stalk flanked by jaguar paws. A reminder that even kings depended on the humble plant's quiet magic. Your eyes drift shut for a moment, not out of exhaustion, but trust. You feel safe here. The kind of safety that comes from being part of something ancient and constant. Like these plants, you're just one season in a much bigger rhythm. When you open them again, you see something glowing faintly at the edge of the field. Fireflies. No lanterns. Hung from wooden posts. Cast in soft golden halos. Another path beckons. But you take one last look at the maize rows. Bow slightly not out of ceremony. Just gratitude and turn toward the light. The night is only just beginning to unfold. The lanterns sway gently in the night breeze, their soft glow stretching into golden ovals on the path ahead. You follow them, boots brushing against stray reeds and mossy earth. The silence now broken only by the distant hoot of an owl and the quiet lap of water against the chinampa edges. With each step, your breath slows further, your mind open, soft, still receptive. You come to what feels like the centre of everything, a circular platform of tamped earth ringed with low stone benches. Lanterns are perched on sticks around it, like stars come to visit the ground. Seated in a loose circle are a group of farmers, old and young, male and female, each one shelling beans into woven baskets. The soft pop of pods opening is like gentle static in an old radio. You sit on one of the benches and, without being asked, are handed a bundle of dried bean pods. Your fingers take to it naturally. Pop, snap it, rattle. The beans are deep red, almost black, like polished obsidian. This is Ayokote, an heirloom bean that's been here longer than some cities. The oldest farmer, a woman with hair like threads of silver and fingers that move like poetry, glances at you with a warm smile. Ayokote, she says simply, grows slow, gives much. There it is again, slow. You're starting to think the Aztecs would have made terrible corporate consultants. Too much waiting, too much silence. But here, in this circle, the patience isn't passive. It's attentive, respectful, a shared act of care. Historically, Aztec farmers didn't just grow beans for food. They grew them as part of milpas agricultural plots, where maize, beans, and squash were planted together in a divine trio. The maize grew tall, the beans climbed up the stalks, and the squash covered the ground with broad leaves, locking in moisture and chasing away weeds. A perfect example of natural harmony. And this isn't just good farming, this is cosmic philosophy with roots. The three crops were sometimes called the Three Sisters by later cultures, and in Mesoamerican cosmology, they represented balance, sky, earth, and underworld. Planting them together wasn't just efficient, it was sacred choreography. Pop, snap, rattle. The rhythm goes on. Your basket slowly fills. It's not about speed. It's about presence. Then someone across the circle speaks up. Not loudly, but clearly. You know, some historians argue whether the milpa came from deliberate science or just generations of trial and error. The others chuckle. It's not an academic debate, it's a fireside joke. Because here, it doesn't matter. The proof is in the soil, not the scrolls. A young boy dumps his full basket and looks up proudly. "My nose ready," he says, grinning. The old woman nods approvingly and points to a stone pot near the centre. He pours the beans in and skips off to fetch water from a nearby jug. Everyone watches him go, not with judgment, but with a kind of gentle amusement that feels timeless. You're offered a sip of something from a clay cup, warm, thick, slightly sweet. Atole, made from maize flour and flavoured with cacao and chili. It hits like a hug in beverage form, a reminder that even their drinks were designed to nourish slowly. And here's a quirky tidbit for tonight. In some Aztec markets, people used cacao beans as currency. Literal money you could brew into a warm drink. Imagine handing someone a latte made out of $20 bills. Delicious and a little extravagant. Someone passes a bowl of roasted squash seeds, crunchy and salted with what might be lake bed ash. They melt on your tongue with an earthy finish. There's laughter in the group, now low, relaxed, full-bodied, not party laughter, but the kind that says, "We've worked enough today, and the night is kind." You think about your life deadlines, instant messages, shipping estimates, always asking, how fast? But here, under the lantern light, with beans in your lap and centuries at your fingertips. You realise that maybe the better question is, how well? A breeze lifts the scent of tilled earth and drying herbs, brushing your face with the freshness of something ancient. You lean back, watching the slow arc of a falling star trace the heavens. No one else reacts. Maybe this sky sees shooting stars all the time. A dog pads into the circle, a mutt with big ears and wiry hair. Clearly the resident companion. He flops beside your feet and sighs, as if to say, finally, you're learning. You scratch behind his ears. He doesn't move, just sighs again. The bean shelling slows. Baskets are set aside. The old woman stands, stretches with the grace of a dancer, and says something soft to the others. They rise one by one and wander off toward hammocks or quiet corners of the garden. No grand goodnights, no fanfare, just stillness. You remain a moment longer, staring into the embers of a small fire, someone left burning nearby. The flames curl lazily, more glow than blaze, like they too have adopted the night's patient rhythm. Then, with a gentle push of your knees, you rise. The dog follows. The path ahead glistens slightly in the moonlight, a sheen of dew forming on the stone. You walk slowly now, on purpose, not because you're tired, but because this moment demands it. As you move past rows of sleeping plants and resting tools, you realise something. You've stopped looking for the next thing, the next activity, the next scene. You're just here. And that, you think, is the real lesson. Patience isn't waiting for something to end. It's being present while it unfolds. The dew sparkles like crushed diamonds under your bare feet as you follow the meandering stone path deeper into the nighttime garden. You've left the fire circle behind, but its warmth lingers, not on your skin, but in your chest. It's the kind of warmth you don't feel so much as carry, like a well-worn coat stitched from memory and understanding. Ahead, a low, reed-covered hut leans into the garden wall, half hidden beneath drooping willow branches. You duck inside, expecting darkness, but it glows with the soft golden light of fireflies trapped in clay lanterns. The scent is immediately different here, pungent, sweet, earthy. Dried herbs hang from the rafters in bunches, leaves curling like whispering tongues. You step closer to a stone table where an older man, his skin the colour of wet clay, his eyes deep as Canotes grinds something in a wide bowl. You nod a quiet greeting, and he gestures you over without stopping. Flor de calabata, he murmurs. For muscle aches, squash blossom. You watch the petals crumble into fine dust under his obsidian grinder. The motion is steady, slow, deliberate. Like everything else in this world, it refuses to be rushed. He dips a fingertip into the powder and touches it to his tongue, then nods. Perfect. Then he offers you the bowl. No words, just trust. You follow his lead, pinching a little between your fingers, tasting cautiously. Bitter at first, then mellow, then faintly floral, like the memory of a garden in spring. You find yourself smiling. In Aztec society, healers called Taisitl were revered not just as physicians, but as caretakers of cosmic balance. They used over 1,000 known herbs, many of which still baffle modern science. They believed illness often came from spiritual imbalance, not just physical dysfunction. A sick stomach could be a sign of grief. A rash might be the mark of anger unspoken. The old man grinds another mixture. This one smells of dried marigold and something resinous copal. He places a pinch into a hollowed gourd and lights it with a thin reed taper. Smoke curls upward, and suddenly the air feels heavy, sacred. You take a seat on a woven mat. Not instructed, just welcomed. As the smoke wafts around you, your breath begins to match its rhythm. Slow, full, deliberate. The man speaks again, but not to you. He's reciting something, a chant or invocation, each syllable rising like steam from warmed stone. Here is your quirky tidbit. Aztec doctors sometimes prescribed baths in flower-infused water, not for luxury, but to realign the spirit. They even believed the scent of certain flowers could influence dreams. Chamomile for peace. Cempasúchil to honour ancestors. Taloque for visions, though. Admittedly, not everyone woke up from those. You close your eyes for a moment, and in the quiet haze, you almost hear the plants breathing back. Not literally, of course, but it feels like they could. The healer finishes his ritual and pours you a drink from a clay flask. It's warm and thick with something starchy and unfamiliar. Maize-based. Again, you've begun to understand that maize wasn't just food to these people. It was bloodline. Myth. Matter. The Aztecs believed humans were created from maize dough mixed with divine blood. So when you sip this drink, you're not just hydrating, you're participating in the story of creation. A literal communion with the gods. Now, of course, historians still argue whether this idea of divine maize was taken literally by all Aztecs, or just emphasized in religious circles. Some think it was symbolic. Others point to ceremonial art that seems to suggest a very real belief in corn-born humanity. Either way, it's clear this golden grain shaped more than diets. It shaped identity. As you sit quietly, cup in hand, the healer places a small stone in your palm. It's smooth, oval, warm, obsidian egg, he says. For balance, carry it tomorrow. You nod. There's no ritual here. No final words. No dramatic exit. Just a stone. A moment. A lesson without a lecture. You step outside, and the garden greets you like an old friend. The moon's higher now, making the water in the chinampas gleam like slivers of silver cloth. The stars above seem closer, like you could reach out and scratch your name into their surface if you tried hard enough. The wind has picked up slightly, tugging at your sleeves. Somewhere, a night bird calls a liquid trill that falls like drops into the silence. The garden feels alive, but not loud, like a sleeping animal that trusts you enough not to flinch. You find a bench and sit, letting the obsidian stone rest on your thigh. You roll it between your fingers, its weight comforting. It doesn't buzz or glow or unlock secret powers. It's just there, and that's enough. You begin to notice how the wind moves through each plant differently. The tall corn rustles, the broad squash leaves flap, the herbs near your feet tremble like shy whispers, all responding in their own time, in their own way. No hurry. The word patience, you realize, has taken on a new shape in your mind. It's no longer about enduring delay. It's about giving things space to become what they need to be. Maybe that includes you. The night deepens, and as you rise from the bench, your fingers still curled around the smooth obsidian stone, you notice the garden is no longer just a place. It's a living rhythm. You walk slowly along the narrow dirt path beside the chinampas, the floating gardens gleaming faintly beneath the moonlight. Water ripples softly as a fish breaks the surface, scattering droplets that catch the light like tiny stars falling to the earth. Aztec chinampas, those ingenious floating gardens, were marvels of agricultural innovation. Built on shallow lake beds and held firm by woven reeds and mud, they were so fertile that multiple harvests a year were common, turning swampy marshes into lush, productive fields. You can almost hear the ancient gardener's footsteps, the gentle pluck of crops, and the soft murmur of water flowing just beneath the surface. You pause to touch the long stalks of maize, its leaves cool and smooth under your fingertips. It's tempting to imagine the hands that tended these plants centuries ago, careful, patient, respectful of the delicate balance between earth and water. It's this balance, you realize, that teaches you more about patience than any story ever could. There's a debate among historians about just how sustainable chinampas truly were. Some argue that they were marvels of eco-friendly engineering, supporting large populations with minimal environmental damage. Others point out the challenges: maintenance, water quality, and the impact of later urban growth on these fragile systems. But one thing is clear: this method thrived because it was patient with nature's rhythms. Nearby, a small bundle of herbs tied with a strip of woven cotton lies beside a stone. You pick it up: marigold, peppermint, and a sprig of copal, the sacred incense plant. You inhale deeply. The scents mingle in your nose, a calming blend, almost like a promise. Here's your quirky tidbit. Aztec farmers sometimes used crushed ants as natural pesticides, not the ones you'd want on your picnic, but in tiny doses. They helped keep crops healthy without harsh chemicals. Imagine that nature's own pest control before it was cool. As you continue walking, you notice a pair of butterflies fluttering just above the water's edge, their wings flashing iridescent blue. The Aztecs saw butterflies as messengers of the gods, symbols of transformation and renewal. You think about that as you watch them dance, feeling a little lighter. The soft sound of a flute carries through the garden air, delicate notes weaving with the night breeze. It reminds you how closely music nature, and daily life intertwined in Aztec culture. Music wasn't just entertainment, it was a way to honor the earth, the gods, and the slow unfolding of time itself. Patience, you realize, isn't just waiting, it's listening, watching, feeling. It's learning to move with the pace of life, not against it. You stop by a small wooden platform, jutting into the water. Sit here and watch the ripples spreading outward. The obsidian stone feels heavier now, grounded in your palm like a silent companion. The night embraces you softly, and for a moment, everything slows down to the perfect speed. The dawn creeps quietly over the horizon, casting soft amber light across the garden's mirrored waters, and you find yourself drawn back to the heart of the Chinampas. You watch as tiny droplets of dew cling to the slender reeds, trembling like fragile jewels in the early sun. The scent of wet earth and blooming flowers fills the air, mingling with the distant calls of birds waking to greet the day. You remember how the Aztecs structured their workdays, in harmony with the sun's journey, rising early to tend their crops when the air was cool and the light was gentle. Their patience was not just in waiting, but in respecting the natural rhythms, the slow unfolding of growth and life that no hurry could accelerate. It's a lesson you carry forward with you now, in the quiet pause before the world wakes. This morning, you see a gardener, wrapped in a dyed indigo tunic and a simple woven hat, carefully planting seedlings in neat rows, his hands steady and deliberate. The gardener's expression is calm, focused, his patience embodied in each precise movement. Nearby, a small wooden basket filled with seeds sits ready, a symbol of hope and continuity. Historians still argue whether Chinampas were used primarily for staple crops or if they also grew medicinal and ceremonial plants extensively. But what's undisputed is their role as both sustenance and spiritual nourishment. The Aztecs saw their gardens as sacred spaces where the earthly and divine met, where every plant had purpose beyond the physical. Here's a quirky fact to tuck into your mind. Some Chinampas were so carefully maintained that they had fish pens built into the water channels, raising fish alongside crops, a kind of early aquaponics that kept the ecosystem balanced. Imagine farming fish and corn side by side, a medieval multitasking marvel. You spot a brightly coloured hummingbird darting through the garden, its wings a blur of motion. To the Aztecs, hummingbirds symbolised vigour and endurance, tiny reminders that even the smallest beings persist through challenges. You smile, feeling a similar pulse of quiet strength stirring inside you. As the gardener wipes sweat from his brow, you realise that patience is a practice woven into every fibre of this place. The slow planting, the gentle watering, the waiting for roots to deepen and fruit to ripen. It's a patience that asks for presence and trust. The morning sun warms your skin as you take a deep breath, the garden alive with promise and stillness all at once. This patience, learned here, feels like a gift you're invited to unwrap slowly, savouring every layer. As the day advances, the warmth settles deeper into the garden, and you move alongside the steady rhythm of Aztec gardeners, balancing work and rest with a wisdom that feels surprisingly modern. You watch a group gathered near a cluster of bright marigolds, their orange petals glowing like tiny flames against the deep green leaves. The gardener's laughter bubbles up as they share stories, passing around woven baskets filled with fresh maize and squash, a simple feast enjoyed between tasks. You notice the intricate weaving of palm fronds, fashioned into sun hats and mats, skillfully crafted to shield from the growing heat. The tactile textures remind you how much of Aztec life was hands-on, every object serving a practical role, but also carrying aesthetic care, like the embroidered patterns on tunics or the delicate stone beads woven into necklaces. Patience, here, isn't just about waiting, it's about community. It's in the shared moments, the passing of knowledge from elder to apprentice, the smiles that stretch through the sunlit hours, and the gentle acceptance that growth is a collective journey. You feel the weight of that lesson settling warmly in your chest. Historians still argue whether Chinampas were managed primarily by individual families or operated as communal enterprises, but either way, the social fabric was undeniably strong, woven tight by daily cooperation and mutual respect. The garden wasn't just a place to grow food, it was where bonds were nourished alongside crops. And here's a quirky tidbit to tickle your imagination. Some Aztec gardeners used colourful feathers to mark special plants or sections of their fields, creating a living tapestry of colour and meaning, a kind of natural calendar, if you will. Reminding them when to harvest or sow, you lean back and breathe in the scent of damp soil, mingled with the sharp sweetness of blossoms, feeling the garden's patient pulse syncing with your own. It's easy to see how this ancient practice teaches a gentle kind of endurance, a way to find peace in the waiting and joy in the tending. With the afternoon light softening, you carry this feeling with you, a quiet reminder that patience is never passive. It is a vibrant, living force, alive in the roots and branches, in the shared laughter, and in the stillness between. The sun dips lower, casting a golden glow over the garden as you wander through the rows of carefully cultivated plants, the air thick with the hum of cicadas and the distant song of a flute. The vibrant azalea bushes and creeping vines seem to shimmer with life, and you catch sight of a gardener carefully tending to a delicate patch of chilies, his fingers gentle as if coaxing the plants to grow just right. There's an artistry here, a deep respect for the slow unfolding of life, where every leaf and flower is a small miracle. You settle near a small canal, watching the water shimmer and ripple over the Chinampa's edge. The system is marvellously efficient, roots dipping into the nutrient-rich water, fish swimming lazily below, all supporting each other in a perfectly balanced ecosystem. It's a lesson in interconnectedness, reminding you that patience extends beyond the individual to the whole. Like the steady heartbeat of the garden itself, historians still argue whether the Chinampa system was developed independently or evolved from earlier Mesoamerican agricultural techniques. But what remains undeniable is the ingenuity behind it, a blend of observation, experimentation, and a deep harmony with nature. You realize that patience isn't just about waiting, but about understanding cycles, respecting timing, and acting at just the right moment. A quirky fact to carry with you tonight. Some gardeners would chant softly to their crops, believing that the words carried energy to encourage growth, a kind of ancient horticultural ASMR. Whether or not the plants responded, the ritual brought calm to the caretakers themselves, a gentle reminder of the human connection to the earth. You close your eyes, feeling the cool evening breeze brush your skin, and let yourself be lulled by the rhythm of water, wind, and whispering leaves. Here in the garden's quiet, you find a patient peace and enduring lesson wrapped in the simple act of nurturing life. Slow and steady, with care, night falls softly now, and the garden transforms under the gentle glow of lanterns swaying in the breeze, casting dancing shadows on the vibrant foliage. You feel the cool earth beneath your feet and hear the soft splash of water as fish glide through the canals, their movements slow and deliberate. The gardeners have long since retreated, leaving only the night's chorus crickets, frogs, and the rustle of leaves to accompany you. There's a sacred stillness here, a moment suspended in time that invites you to breathe deeply and reflect. The Aztecs believed that gardens were not merely utilitarian spaces, but sacred places where the divine and earthly met. Each plant, each stone, was a vessel of spiritual significance, cultivated with patience as an act of devotion. You think about how waiting becomes a form of reverence, an acceptance that some things cannot be rushed without losing their essence. This patience is a quiet strength, one that carries you through the restlessness of life. Historians still argue whether the spiritual aspect of Aztec gardening influenced broader Mesoamerican religious practices or vice versa. But either way, the intertwining of faith and farming offers a rich tapestry of meaning. The garden teaches that time itself is a sacred gift to be honoured with respect and care. Here's a quirky little tidbit. Some Aztec gardeners planted marigolds and other fragrant flowers, not only for beauty, but also to attract helpful insects, a natural pest control long before the word organic existed. It's a reminder that patience includes waiting for nature's helpers to arrive in their own time. As you settle down on a smooth stone by the water's edge, you let your thoughts slow and your breathing soften. The garden's lessons seep into your bones, the wisdom of patience, the dance of nature's timing, and the peace found in simply being present. The first light of dawn gently brushes the sky, tinting the clouds with soft hues of rose and gold as the garden stirs awake. You watch as dew glistens on leaves, and the fragrance of blooming blossoms fills the air, both subtle and intoxicating. The birds' morning chorus rises, a delicate symphony that welcomes a new day, while tiny ripples spread across the canals where the water lilies float, serene and unhurried. This quiet rebirth reminds you that patience isn't just about waiting, but about embracing cycles of renewal and growth. In Aztec culture, gardens were living classrooms where time taught the virtue of patience, an idea echoed in the steady, deliberate care given to each plant, each irrigation canal, each carved stone. You think back to how much life's rhythms rely on this steady pace, a reminder that rushing often distorts beauty and meaning. Sometimes, just as the garden unfolds petal by petal, your own journeys require slow unfolding and trust in timing. Historians still debate whether these gardens served primarily spiritual functions or practical urban agriculture, or if they were a seamless blend of both. But that ambiguity itself reflects the layered patience needed to understand history and nature alike. A fun little fact: some Aztec gardeners believed that talking kindly to plants encouraged their growth. Early plant whisperers, if you will, whether science or superstition, it highlights the mindful attention at the heart of patience. As the sun rises higher, you close your eyes and feel a calm warmth settle over you, the kind that lingers long after leaving the garden. The lesson is simple but profound. Patience nurtures not only the earth but your soul, guiding you gently through life's seasons. Hey guys, tonight we wind down our journey through the wisdom of Aztec gardens with a gentle reflection on patience as the day begins anew. Picture the soft dawn light spilling over tranquil waters, the sweet scent of blooming flowers filling the cool morning air, and the peaceful rustle of leaves in a quiet city garden. You probably won't survive this without feeling a bit more relaxed, maybe even a little sleepy. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop your location and local time in the comments. I love knowing who's joining me around the world. Now, so, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. You sit quietly as the sun gently lifts the garden from its slumber, revealing the delicate balance between growth and rest that Aztec gardeners understood so well. Every petal, every drop of dew, tells a story of patience, of nature's slow, deliberate unfolding. It's in this gentle rhythm that you find a calming lesson sometimes. To truly grow, you must wait, breathe, and trust the process. Historians still debate whether these gardens were sacred spaces, practical urban farms, or a seamless blend of both, but their enduring beauty speaks louder than words. It's as if the gardens themselves are whispering that patience is an ancient art worth mastering. And here's a quirky tidbit. Some Aztec gardeners believed speaking kindly to plants encouraged their growth, making them early plant whisperers. So, maybe next time you're waiting for something, try whispering a kind word to yourself. Now, as the birds sing softly and the morning sun warms your skin, feel that patient calm settle deep within you, carrying this gentle wisdom softly into your dreams. Sleep well, and when you wake, may your world feel just a little more balanced and beautifully ordered than before. End of script. Sweet dreams.